You are being transferred. The cold-eyed manager, Alex, announced my reassignment, and I couldn't hide my shock. The destination was a store located on a remote island, far from the big city. Among the employees, it was rumored that being transferred there was akin to a demotion. This is a final decision. If you have complaints, take them to headquarters. Faced with Alex's stern words, I couldn't argue. However, on this island, surrounded by crystal clear skies and the vast ocean, I was destined to encounter something extraordinary. Will you, with me? Captivated by her blushing smile as she extended her hand, I found myself naturally reaching out to take it. My name is Michael. I work at a major sports goods company, Williams Sporting Goods. My main duties involve stocking and managing orders at the retail store. I handle inventory in the backroom, tracking sales and arranging supplies. But then, Michael, help! The register just stopped working. Can you fix this? A coworker from my team pointed to a malfunctioning register. After a quick check, it seemed to be a minor issue I could handle without calling for a technician. I grabbed some tools, made a few adjustments, and the register was back in action. Thank you, Michael. As she enthusiastically shook my hands up and down, another colleague peeked in. Michael, can you come here for a second? I finished setting up the hiking gear section. Can you check if it looks okay? He led me to the hiking section. In the hiking section, various items like boots, backpacks, and trekking poles were neatly arranged. I took a moment to survey the layout. It looks good, but this backpack is for women, right? Maybe it'd be better placed lower, where it's easier to reach. I thought it looked better higher up, but yeah, you're right. Women are generally shorter than men. And this bear bell, why not put it somewhere more visible? With all the recent bear incidents, I think customers might be more inclined to buy one if they see it right away. Good point. He stroked his chin thoughtfully and began reconsidering the layout. Just then, another coworker appeared, calling out, Michael! Michael! Help! There's a foreign customer asking for product recommendations, but I'm terrible at English. They barely understand Japanese. Following the nearly tearful coworker, I approached a customer who was trying out different baseball gloves. In English, I asked what he was looking for and learned he was joining a recreational baseball team and wanted to know the best glove for his position. Since he primarily played first base, I lined up some first baseman's mitts and explained the features of each. After trying several, the customer seemed undecided. Observing his attire and mannerisms, I suggested one that seemed like a good fit, and he ended up loving it enough to buy it. Thank you. It's great having you at this store, Michael. Seriously, you're so helpful. You're good with machines, knowledgeable about products, and you can speak English without hesitation. As my coworkers gathered around, singing my praises, Alex appeared. It's still work hours. Stop slacking and get back to your tasks. Okay, they replied reluctantly, dispersing to their respective duties. And you, Michael? Isn't your job something other than customer service or displays? Sorry, but isn't it natural to step in and help when others can't handle something? At this, Alex shot me a cold glare. Just get back to your station. His sharp tone sent me straight back to the stockroom. Alex had always been strict and unapproachable, but lately, he seemed especially harsh toward me in particular. As I sighed, I noticed Alex making a phone call, his expression grim. Something about it gave me a bad feeling. And that feeling turned out to be right. The next day, as I arrived at work, Alex called me over and said, Michael, you are being transferred. I couldn't hide my shock at the location Alex coldly announced. It was a store on a remote island, far from the big city. The very existence of a store there was puzzling, and among the employees, it was rumored that being sent there was essentially a demotion. Why is Michael being sent to some remote island? Alex, we'll be in trouble if Michael leaves. Employees who had apparently been eavesdropping voiced their shock and objections. But when Alex shot them a glare, everyone fell silent. This is a final decision. If you have complaints, take them to headquarters. After Alex's stern declaration and departure, the employees gathered around me. Michael, what are we supposed to do without you? That's definitely just Alex being spiteful. He's always been envious of you. I bet he's worried you'll take his position as manager. Since you're so capable. As my coworkers chattered noisily, I gazed out the window. The clear blue sky outside stood in stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. After about 3 hours of weaving through the waves on a jet boat, I arrived at my destination. Stepping off the boat, I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the island's pristine air. Looking up, I saw seagulls circling in the cloudless blue sky. On the way to the store where I'd been reassigned, I took in the sights of the island. Everywhere I looked, there were beaches, surfers, old houses, cliffs, lush greenery, and that vast blue sky. It was an incredibly peaceful place. The locals I passed all greeted me warmly with good morning, their expressions calm and kind. Of course, I returned their smiles. Walking leisurely, I soon arrived at my destination. The entrance wasn't an automatic door but a pair of swinging double doors. Excuse me, I'm Michael. I've been assigned here starting today. As I entered and greeted the store, a woman sitting at the register, reading a book, looked up. Her short, neatly trimmed hair suited her cute features perfectly. The moment our eyes met, I felt as if my heart had been struck by lightning. This was what people called love at first sight. Her wide, jewel-like eyes opened even wider as she stared at me. When I tilted my head in confusion at her expression, she pursed her lips slightly. She might have been surprised that I'd arrived earlier than expected. Hold on a moment. She stood up and rang a bell sitting on the counter. As I admired her voice, which felt vaguely familiar and endearing, 4 men emerged from the back room. I'm Claire. I'm the manager here. Just call me Claire. And these are the employees. There are 2 more, but they're off today. I'll introduce them another time. As Claire introduced them, the 4 men lined up in front of me and greeted me with a quick, "Nice to meet you." I returned the greeting, and they promptly disappeared back into the back room as if their obligation had been fulfilled. Left alone with Claire, my heart began to race. If I remembered correctly, she was the daughter of the company president, Mr. Williams. I hadn't realized she was such an incredible person. If I had known, I would have worked harder to get assigned to her store sooner. While my mind spun with these thoughts, Claire continued speaking. This store is nothing like the one you worked at before. Hardly any customers come here, so just take it easy. Take it easy. I widened my eyes at her words and glanced around the store. Even so, everything here is neatly displayed, and it's spotlessly clean. Oh, that's because we have an employee who loves cleaning. I nodded in understanding, though something about it still didn't sit right with me. As I stared at Claire, she frowned slightly, her cheeks reddening, and asked, "What are you looking at?" Adorable. No, wait. I pulled myself together and studied her again. Her eyes seemed to hold a mixture of hope and resignation. Claire, deep down, you don't really think it's okay not to work properly, do you? Ha? My words left her mouth hanging open in surprise. You feel like things need to be done properly, don't you? But maybe you're running away from something? As I puzzled over what that something could be, Claire's eyebrows shot up, and she glared at me. I told you, I don't think that, you idiot. Just go to the back room and learn how things work from someone else. She had called me an idiot right after meeting me. Well, maybe I deserved it for asking something so intrusive. Fair enough, I guess. Still, even when she's angry, she's incredibly cute. It made me want to impress her, so I decided to do the opposite of what she said and push myself harder. The next day, while I was at the backroom computer researching something, Claire appeared beside me. What are you doing? Just looking something up. Aha! Well, never mind that. I'm going to show you around the island. Right now? I glanced up at the clock. I had just come back from lunch, so it was a little after 1 p.m. You and I both have supply work this afternoon, right? But today's not a delivery day, and we haven't sold anything, so there's no need to order. We're free. Without waiting for an answer, Claire headed outside. I closed the browser and rushed after her. I had no intention of missing this chance to be alone with her. The only sounds were the waves and wind rustling through the trees, accompanied by the cries of seagulls overhead. Claire and I walked side by side along a road completely free of cars. Naturally, I took the driveway side. After a while, we arrived at the port. The very spot where I first set foot on this island. Now, there were no ferries or jet boats, just a cluster of fishing boats bobbing on the water. That's the only convenience store on the island. It's not like the ones in the city, the selection is pretty sparse. And it closes when the sun sets. Peering through the glass walls, I saw an older man who seemed to be the clerk, sitting at the cashier and reading a newspaper. Claire had been reading a book when I first arrived, too. People here sure seemed relaxed. The shops are all clustered in this area. As she spoke, she introduced the stores lined up along the coast, one by one. When I glanced out at the sea, I saw 3 surfers enjoying the waves. After that, she showed me the town hall, the clinic, the police box, lodging facilities, and the elementary school, bringing us to about halfway around the island. We had reached the northern part of the island. There were no houses, no shops, not even a hint of people in this area. Just overgrown vegetation, sandy beaches, the sea, and the vast blue sky. Nobody comes here. It's my favorite spot. You're the first person I've ever told about it. Even though there was no one else around, she leaned in close and spoke in a low voice, making my heart race. She sat down on the sandy ground, and I followed suit. The ocean breeze played with her hair. Still, getting transferred to such an unremarkable place must have been tough for you, Michael. Not at all. This island is peaceful, the nature is beautiful, and it's wonderful here. I'm determined to do my best. Claire tilted her head. Do your best. But I told you, there's nothing to do here. No, there is something we can do. There isn't. Hardly any young people live here. There's only one elementary school, and it doesn't even have 10 students. At best. Those kids come to buy sneakers, or the teachers buy supplies for their lessons. That's about it for our store. No, there is something. Look. I pointed at the ocean, but Claire only tilted her head in confusion. It seemed she didn't understand what I meant. Yesterday and today, I saw people surfing out there. This ocean is perfect for surfing. The waves are great. When I looked it up online earlier, I found out this spot is known among certain surfers as a hidden gem. If we promote this, we could attract more surfers. We could target them by selling surfboards and wetsuits. Claire studied the waves in front of us intently. I don't really know if these are good surfing waves or not. They are. I can tell, I have an advanced surfing certification. Why do you even have something like that? Claire sighed in exasperation. Ignoring her reaction, I laid out the plan I'd been thinking of since yesterday. I was thinking of using our equipment to make a video of me surfing and posting it online for promotion. If it catches on, it might go viral. Oh. And don't worry, you can all just keep doing your usual tasks. I'll handle it myself. Trying to reassure her that I wouldn't burden anyone, I added that detail. But instead, she let out another big sigh. Why are you so motivated? You know, don't you? In our company, it's rumored that being transferred here means you've been demoted. Of course, I know. But I believe there's a reason I was sent here. Looking ahead, I saw the sunlight glinting on the waves. Ever since I was a kid, I've been able to do anything without much effort, whether it was studying or sports. Because of that, my parents taught me that I should always help those who struggle. I've kept that in mind ever since. That's why, even here, I'll just do what I can. Helping those who can't, huh? Claire pouted slightly and looked down. Curious, I leaned in to look at her face, but before I could, she stood up abruptly. By the time I looked up, the pout was gone, replaced by a smile. Let's do it together, then. Not just me, but everyone in the store. We don't have much else to do, so why not try it for fun? Still sitting on the sand, I watched as Claire extended her hand toward me with a smile. The sunlight reflecting off the waves seemed to form a halo around her. Mesmerized by her radiance, I instinctively reached out and took her hand. Her hand was warm and steady as she gripped mine. The project, which we named the Surfing Spot PR campaign, was announced by Claire to the entire team. I've already contacted headquarters to request a full set of surfing gear. Once it arrives, we'll kick things off. Michael will do the surfing. Leo will handle filming, and Ryan will help with transporting equipment. Max will edit the video and use it for promotion. Meanwhile, Tyler, Lucas, and Jake will take care of the store. Watching Claire assign roles so efficiently, I couldn't help but stare in awe. Noticing my gaze, she gave me a triumphant look. Leo takes photos of the scenery around here all the time, so he knows the best angles. Ryan is strong, and Max is great at editing videos. As for Jake, he's a rain magnet, so it's best not to bring him along. The employees burst into laughter at her remark. Even Jake, the so-called rain magnet, laughed along, showing no sign of dissatisfaction. And that was true for everyone else as well. That's amazing, Claire. You're so good at bringing everyone together. You've got real leadership skills. Not at all. When I honestly told her what I thought, she looked slightly flustered. When the full set of surfing equipment arrived, we immediately headed to the beach. The weather was perfect with clear skies and ideal waves. Luckily, not a single other surfer was there. It was the perfect day for filming. It had been 3 years since I last surfed, back when I got my certification. But it didn't take long to get the hang of it again. Within 10 minutes, I was riding the waves smoothly. The waves here were easier to ride than any I'd experienced before. I got so into it that I forgot we were filming and just enjoyed surfing to the fullest. Michael, we've got enough footage. Let's take a break and head back. Hearing Claire call out, I glanced at my watch and realized I'd been riding waves for 2 hours. As soon as I became aware of it, a wave of exhaustion hit me. When I returned to the shore, I found Claire, Leo, and Ryan sitting on a spread-out plastic sheet. Leo was busy reviewing the footage, staring intently at the camera screen. I made lunch. If you'd like, help yourself, Claire said, opening a large lunchbox. Inside the boxes were homemade rice balls and various side dishes. My stomach growled loudly. Did you make this yourself, Claire? Well, yes, sort of, she replied, her cheeks tinged with pink. Grateful, I raised my hands in surrender and decided to partake. There's dessert too. I didn't have time to make it, so I bought it from the convenience store, sweet dumplings. Oh, I'll skip the lunch. Just give me the dessert, Ryan quipped. Hey, Ryan. That's rude, Claire protested. If Ryan doesn't want it, I'll eat it all myself, I said, pulling the lunchbox closer while Ryan grabbed the dessert package. Claire, though chiding me with "you'll get a stomachache if you eat that much," seemed pleased watching me enjoy her food. The promotional video edited by Max using Leo's footage was uploaded to a major video platform, thanks to Claire's connections with headquarters. In just one day, the video surpassed 10,000 views. While surfers were the primary audience, many viewers were also captivated by the ocean, sky, and natural beauty showcased in the video. This led to an influx of visitors to the island. We pushed surfing gear to the forefront in the store, resulting in a significant boost in sales. When even professional surfers started showing up, we were genuinely stunned. Moreover, the increased tourist interest in activities beyond surfing brought newfound vitality to the entire island. It was a welcome and unexpected outcome. And now, a toast to celebrating our record-breaking sales. Claire cheered, kicking off our celebration. Though modest, it was a gathering in the store's backroom after closing, with everyone sharing drinks and snacks they had brought. Claire's homemade dishes, like omelets and fried chicken, were a treat for me. You know, the store feels so different at night, like it has a unique charm, like being in a school after hours. Hearing that, Lucas nodded and said, "Yeah, that's true." Speaking of schools at night, that reminds me of ghost stories. I heard there's an old one tied to this island from a local, Jake said. What kind of story? Tell us. Ryan asked eagerly, his voice brimming with anticipation. Jake set down his beer can and adopted a serious expression. Long ago, a ship sank off the northern shore of this island. Apparently, it belonged to a group of troublemakers who had been plundering the surrounding islands. The locals decided to teach them a lesson and sabotage the ship. It's said that the crew, who perished in the wreck, became vengeful spirits. Every night, they wander the northern beach, and those who see them are cursed with misfortune. A heavy silence fell over the group. Suddenly, Tyler clapped his hands, startling Claire, who jumped in her seat. Let's have a test of courage. We'll pair up and head to the northern beach. That sounds fun. Let's do it. Ryan chimed in enthusiastically. Fueled by excitement, Tyler grabbed a piece of paper and eagerly started drawing lots for the pairs. Let's not do this. If there's a legend like that, it probably means the northern beach is dangerous at night, Claire argued. What's this, Claire? Are you scared? No, of course not. Ryan grinned as he spoke, and Claire shot back with a flustered tone, visibly agitated. Then Claire goes first. Tyler held out the lot drawing, and Claire hesitantly wrote down her name. Okay, next is Michael. Tyler said, holding the paper in front of me with his finger strategically placed on one line. I tilted my head in question, but he just smiled brightly. Reluctantly, I wrote my name in the designated spot, prompting Tyler to nod in satisfaction. Once everyone had written their names, the results were announced. I ended up being paired with Claire. Tyler, you set this up, didn't you? I whispered to Tyler, making sure Claire couldn't hear. He grinned mischievously. Of course I did. You like Claire, right? I'm rooting for you. Go for it. Far from being annoyed, I was actually grateful and thanked him. With a flashlight in hand, Claire and I headed toward the northern beach. The northern beach was the spot Claire had recommended earlier, saying no one ever went there. Perhaps the ghost story was the reason for its emptiness, even during the day. Unlike when she guided me around the island, Claire's pace was much slower this time. Are you okay? We can forfeit if you want. What? Do you think I'm scared of ghosts too, Michael? Not at all. Suddenly, I remembered one of my students from when I worked part-time as an online English conversation tutor. That was back when I was studying abroad in the US. Because it was summer, I told a ghost story in English, and even though the student was clearly terrified, she tried to act tough, saying, I'm not scared at all. As I recalled this, the bushes nearby rustled suddenly. Ah! Claire let out a cute scream, clinging to my arm. It turned out to be a black cat leaping out from the bushes. Without a collar, it was likely a stray. It crossed in front of us and disappeared. A black cat. It's a bad omen when one crosses your path. Claire clung tighter to my arm. The softness I felt made my brain momentarily overheat. But I quickly composed myself. In Japan, a black cat crossing your path is considered good luck. The bad omen idea is more of a foreign superstition. Really? So it's the opposite here compared to overseas. She seemed relieved, loosening her grip, though she didn't let go entirely. I noticed her trembling slightly. I couldn't force her to keep going like this. Claire, I think I'm getting scared of heading to the northern beach. What should we do? You're scared? Well, if you're scared, then we have no choice but to forfeit. Exactly. If I'm scared, there's nothing we can do. And so, we turned back, deciding not to continue to the northern beach. It was only then that Claire seemed to realize she'd been clinging to me. She quickly pulled away, flustered. Sorry. I was just startled for a moment. It's not like I was scared or anything. Her blushing face as she tried to explain herself was so adorable that I had to fight the urge to laugh. If I laughed now, I'd surely upset her. We walked a bit apart for a while, but before long, she edged closer to me, looking hesitant. I'm not scared or anything, but you are, right? So wouldn't it help if we held hands? Her flushed cheeks and upward glance made her look so endearing. It was as if she'd gathered all the cuteness in the world. That sounds like a good idea. Would you hold my hand? When I extended my hand, she took it. Her grip was firm, and I noticed her exhaling softly in relief. Pretending not to notice, I walked on through the night. Hey, Michael, do you know why our store is on this island? I shook my head. Claire smiled shyly. This is the birthplace of my grandfather, the founder of Williams Sporting Goods. He started his first sports shop here. And that's how the company began. Even now, our company cherishes this island store because of that connection. Claire gazed up at the night sky. Following her lead, I looked up to see a stunning canopy of stars spread out above us. The deep navy carpet of the night sky, scattered with countless jewels, was a breathtaking sight that could never be seen in the city. Being entrusted with such an important store just because I'm the president's daughter has always been a huge source of pressure for me. I used the lack of customers as an excuse to escape from that pressure. But thanks to you, Michael, I've changed. Seeing you work so hard and stay positive made me realize I need to work hard too. Thank you. And also, Claire paused for a moment and looked down. I'm sorry for getting mad at you the day you first arrived on the island. What you said hit too close to home, and I couldn't help but snap. I didn't mind at all. When I said that, Claire placed a hand on her chest in relief and smiled at me. Her smile shone brighter than the countless stars above us. As tourists and surfers visiting the island became a regular occurrence, our sales growth began to slow down. We need to come up with a new plan. Claire murmured. Lucas, who was cleaning, furrowed his brow and said, What if we invite professional surfers from abroad? When I suggested, Claire and Lucas both exclaimed, What, in unison. Hearing this, Leo and Tyler peeked out from the back room. Most of our current customers are Japanese, right? So, our next target should be foreigners. We can invite professional surfers from abroad to actually surf here and then use that as a promotional strategy. The idea's solid, but I can't speak English, Leo said, and Tyler nodded in agreement. Claire and Lucas can, right? You both handled those foreign tourists the other day. When I looked at them, Claire and Lucas exchanged glances. I only know a little. I left most of it to Claire that time, Lucas admitted. True, Claire was really fluent and confident, I added. Well, you know. It's all thanks to certain experiences, Claire said, raising her eyebrows slightly. In contrast, Lucas frowned. Ryan and Jake aren't good at English either. I'd be worried about bringing in foreign customers with our current abilities. It's fine. I'm confident in my English. I scored 900 points on the TOEIC. Between your surfing certification and this, Michael, what exactly are you aiming for? Tyler asked, sounding exasperated. I scratched my cheek awkwardly. I wanted to be prepared for anything, so I tried a lot of things in college. I even studied abroad in the US. I've also passed certifications in sign language, Japanese, accounting, food specialties, tourism, travel management, and other specialized certifications. You're overqualified, Claire quipped, prompting laughter from the other employees. Well, let's give it a shot. Michael, teach us some English. We can't leave it all to you and Claire. Of course. The relaxed atmosphere seemed to encourage everyone, and they all nodded in agreement. Thanks to Claire's connections, professional surfers from the US, France, and Africa, among other countries, arrived on the island. Since they all spoke English, we decided to handle everything in English. Until their arrival, I led intensive English conversation lessons for the staff. The most important thing in learning to speak a new language is not being afraid of making mistakes. Even in our native language, we make errors sometimes, right? It's the same for native English speakers. As long as your meaning gets across, it doesn't matter if you make a few mistakes. That advice seemed to help. On the day of the event, everyone confidently communicated in English with their assigned surfers. Relieved, I chatted with my own surfer while they tried out the equipment. We lent them our products to enjoy surfing. And Leo captured it all on camera. Michael, you were right, these are amazing waves. This is an incredible surf spot. My assigned surfer exclaimed happily in English. Just then, a loud voice in French echoed across the beach. Hey, what is the meaning of this? Everyone turned to see what was happening, alarmed. It was Jules, a French surfer who had placed second in a world competition. He was shouting furiously at Claire. This surfboard broke after only a short time on the water. I almost got injured. You invited me all the way out here, and this is how I'm treated? The psychological shock is immense. How are you going to take responsibility for this? He seemed to have lost control due to his anger, reverting to his native French. Because of this, Claire, unable to understand what he was saying, looked pale. I told my assigned surfer to wait for a moment and headed over to them. As I got closer, I could see that Claire was on the verge of tears. It pained me to see her like that. I gently moved her behind me and stood in front of the still angry surfer. In fluent French, I said, "Please calm down." Hearing this, his expression shifted. You speak French fluently? Yes, quite well. May I take a look at the surfboard? I'd like to see how it broke. Jules seemed surprised by my fluency in French, and his anger seemed to dissipate. He willingly showed me the surfboard. This looks like it hit a rock or something. Where were you surfing? I asked. Looking sheepish, he replied. I'm sorry. Actually, I was surfing a bit west from here. There were fewer people there. Ah, the west side, there's a rocky area over there, isn't there? So you hit a rock? Yes. This isn't your product's fault. In my panic, fearing for my life, I lashed out and blamed you. I wasn't thinking clearly. And I'm sorry for that. He bowed his head to me first, then turned to Claire and repeated his apology in English before bowing to her as well. The surrounding crowd erupted in applause, cheers, and whistles. Relieved that the crisis had been averted, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. After guiding the surfers back to their accommodations, we returned to the company housing, where everyone headed to their rooms. However, as I reached the entrance, I felt a small tug on my sleeve. It was Claire. I decided to stay. Thank you for earlier. When Jules came back from the ocean and suddenly started yelling, I couldn't understand him and got really scared. As she recalled the moment, tears began streaming down her face. A sharp pain tugged at my heart, and I instinctively pulled her into an embrace. Claire seemed surprised but didn't push me away. Instead, she wrapped her arms around my back. Still, Michael, it's amazing that you can speak French too. Just how many languages do you know? While still holding her, I counted on my fingers. Let's see, 4, no, 5? That's more than I expected," she said, stunned for a moment before giggling softly and resting her forehead against my chest. Our bodies pressed together, and my heart raced like a drum. "Thank you, Michael." The sound of the waves gently surrounded us. The PR campaign involving foreign pro surfers was a success, and now international visitors came to the island frequently. They bought surfing gear from our store, boosting sales even further. Additionally, we started a volunteer program teaching English to the islanders. In this way, the entire island became lively once again. It created a wonderful cycle of positivity. Amid this success, Alex, my former manager, showed up just as winter was approaching. "It's good to see you doing well. I've heard about it, how sales have increased here since your transfer. It's all thanks to the team at this store. I couldn't have achieved these results on my own." Alex stared at me with his usual cold eyes. Then, to my surprise, he bowed his head. "Michael, would you consider returning to our store? Ever since you left, things have been going wrong, and sales have been plummeting." Seeing Alex bowing deeply, I felt a pang of sympathy. But my decision was already made. "I'm sorry, Alex, but I'm staying here." Alex slowly raised his head in response. His usual stern look was gone, replaced by an expression full of regret. "You're right. I'm sorry for showing up suddenly and saying all this," Alex said, bowing his head slightly. I shook my head gently. "No need to apologize. Before my transfer, Mr. Williams, the president, explained everything to me. My reassignment wasn't just a demotion. It was for the sake of your team. You were worried that because I did everything, no one else would have the chance to grow." Alex remained silent, his gaze cast downward. "You interviewed me during the hiring process, didn't you? Do you remember? When I mentioned studying abroad in the US, you said, 'Just knowing English isn't enough in today's world.' I was so inspired by those words that I worked hard to learn as many languages as I could before joining the company. Thanks to you, I can now use my multilingual skills. You didn't just teach me the value of languages, you also showed me the challenges and joys of work." "Thank you." As I spoke, Alex finally raised his head. "Do you not resent me? Even though I'm the one who demoted you?" "Well, I was shocked when you told me I was being transferred, but now I understand the reason. Besides, I've gained so much from being here that I'm grateful, not resentful." A single tear slipped from Alex's eye. He quickly wiped it away with his sleeve and let out a sigh. "I've been telling my team not to rely too much on you, yet it seems I was the one who depended on you the most. I need to get my act together." With those words, Alex stood up. He bowed once, then left the store. I followed him out to the storefront. "Alex, you're doing great. Your store will bounce back in no time. Good luck." I called out loudly to his retreating back. Alex didn't turn around, but he waved his hand gently as he walked away. After his figure disappeared from view, I returned to the back room. There, I found Claire sitting at her desk, resting her chin on her hand, staring at me intently. "Are you going back to your old store?" "No." Claire let out a relieved sigh. Her sense of relief made me happy as well. "Michael, there's somewhere I'd like you to come with me after work," she said, blushing slightly and sounding hesitant. I nodded immediately without hesitation. After work, Claire led me to the northern beach. The sun was still high, but as usual, the place was deserted. "Are you okay coming here, Claire?" "I'm fine. I've come here plenty of times during the day, and nothing's ever happened." It seemed that Claire was confident as long as the sun was shining. I found that part of her endearing and couldn't help but smile softly. She stepped onto the beach and came to a stop. I stood beside her. "My father also asked me to return to the headquarters. I think it's because of the store's recent success," she said quietly. Her words surprised me. but I still want to stay here. I want to keep working with the team and bring even more life to this island. So I said no. I turned him down for the same reason, I said. Hearing that, Claire smiled warmly at me. In that case, Michael, I'd like you to teach me another language. Like you did before. Before? You really don't remember, do you? She said, puffing out her cheeks in mock annoyance at my confusion. Michael, you used to be an online English tutor, right? Back when I was a student, I was one of your students. Oh. You were the one who got really scared when I told a ghost story. I was not scared. Her face turned bright red as she protested. That voice, it was unmistakably the voice of that student from the online classes. I figured it out right away, but you acted like we were strangers, she continued. To be fair, back then, you didn't show your face because of privacy rules, and you used a handle instead of your real name. With just your voice as a clue, even I couldn't figure it out immediately. Claire shrugged, then quickly nodded in agreement. You're right. Back then, as the daughter of Mr. Williams, the president, everyone just assumed I would take over the company someday. That expectation put a lot of pressure on me. My father made me start learning English too, but honestly, I wasn't into it. Still, I kept at it because you worked so hard to make the lessons enjoyable. Thanks to you, I became confident in my English skills. Claire crouched down on the sand. I sat down beside her. I used to be just a regular employee like you. Back then, I was still trying my best. But then, all of a sudden, I was made the manager of this store. I guess it's because this store has been treasured for generations. Over time, I realized that I was also responsible for the livelihoods of the people working here. That realization made the weight of my role feel overwhelming. I ended up running away because of that. But I'm not going to run away anymore. Her determined eyes met mine, piercing straight through me. My heart skipped a beat. As if she wouldn't let me escape, she grasped my hand. I love you, Michael. I've felt that way ever since you taught me English. It was because of you that I found the strength to keep going. So, Claire seemed to shine brilliantly before my eyes. I realized with certainty that falling in love with her at first sight had been inevitable. I love you too, Claire. As I leaned in closer, her eyes widened slightly, and a blush spread across her cheeks. Then, as if making up her mind, she closed her eyes tightly. My heart overflowed with affection. Unable to hold back, I gently kissed her. A year had passed since my transfer. Looking at the calendar hanging in the back room, I marveled at how quickly time flies. Michael, a customer's asking for you, Lucas called out to me. When I stepped out, I saw Jules, the French surfer Claire had worked with during our international campaign. I greeted him with a big smile. I watched the broadcast of the recent World Championship. Congratulations on your win. As soon as I congratulated him, he scratched his head bashfully. You're still going strong, I see, he said, glancing around the store. Indeed, there were several customers browsing inside. Lucas, who had just called for me, was now explaining surfboards to a customer who seemed to be trying surfing for the first time. Claire was busy at the register, handling payments. Thanks to you using our surfboards and wetsuits to win, Williams's name has spread like wildfire in the surfing world. Not only has this store seen more customers, but headquarters has been flooded with orders. That's great. I hope this makes up for what happened back then. It more than makes up for it, it's paid back with interest. When I responded with the biggest smile I could muster, Jules gave me a wry grin. At that moment, Claire approached us. It seemed she had left Tyler in charge of the register. After exchanging a few words in French with Claire, Jules turned to us with a smile. I heard you're getting married. Congratulations. News travels fast. Thank you, I replied. As he said, Claire and I were soon to be married. On Claire's left ring finger was a matching wedding band, identical to mine, as she laughed bashfully. "We're planning to have the wedding here on the island," I added. "That's a great idea. The sea and sky here are beautiful, it'll be a fantastic wedding. Make sure to invite me." "Of course." After a firm handshake, Jules said he was heading to the ocean for some surfing. "We're going to have a lot of guests, huh? Your old manager, Alex, is coming too, right?" Claire asked. "Yeah. I'm glad everyone will get to see you on our big day. Although, your wedding dress will be so stunning. I kind of don't want anyone else to see it," I teased. "Michael, stop it." Claire pouted, but her expression quickly softened into a smile. "I've always been able to handle things effortlessly since I was a child. It's a unique ability, and I was taught to use it for the benefit of others, which I've always tried to do. But relying on that alone can stifle not only the growth of those around me but also my own. Working together with those around me. By doing so, everyone can grow, and a positive cycle is created." I vowed to continue collaborating with Claire, my co-workers, the islanders, and those who visit, to further develop Williams and this island together. No way. It's gone. I swear I left it here just a moment ago. What about the computer data? It's gone, all of it. On the crucial day for presenting the press release to an important client, the data she was supposed to showcase had been completely deleted. She was on the verge of tears, overwhelmed by anxiety. Finally, it was her turn to present, and the data was still nowhere to be found. What should I do? As she stood frozen, her face pale with fear, I tapped her on the shoulder and headed to the stage. Everyone was visibly shocked when I, the overlooked employee who sits by the window, approached the microphone. "This is because I am. My name is Skylar. I joined this travel agency as a mid-career hire about 6 months ago. I'd heard that the travel industry was demanding, and this company is no exception. Being a major company handling both domestic and international travel, the workload is even heavier. My responsibilities mainly involve responding to inquiries, managing unreasonable requests, and handling complaints. Tasks that keep me quietly busy at my desk. Finishing my tasks efficiently and diligently has always been my principle. Above all, it's because I aim to clock out on time. As I was wrapping up my work, thinking I might leave on time again today, I heard a familiar voice. Another late night, huh? Well, if we planners slack off, the company might as well go under, right? Gosh, I envy people like you, Skylar. You always leave on time. You'll have to teach me your secret someday. The voice, dripping with condescension, belonged to Eugene. Eugene is an elite graduate from a prestigious university with study abroad experience. He's a key planner in the travel agency and is responsible for developing itineraries. Though we're around the same age. He frequently looks down on me because of his impressive background and my status as a mid-career hire sitting by the window. By now, his sarcastic remarks have become routine, so they feel like part of the job. Eugene, I just finished my work within the set time. Anyway, it's time for me to leave. See you tomorrow. What? Prioritizing clocking out over workplace camaraderie? Classic useless desk jockey. Oh, and I outrank you. So address me properly as Mr. Miller, will you? Got it. Have a good night, Mr. Miller. His jabs didn't bother me as much as sticking to my schedule. I grabbed my heavy backpack and quickly left the office. I got off 2 stops away from my usual station. This area is also close to an office district. At this hour, it's especially crowded with people in suits. Weaving through the crowd, I entered a building, pulled out a name card from my bag, and opened the door. A blonde receptionist noticed me and greeted me with a bright smile. Hey, Skylar. You look tired, what's up? Thanks. Just a bit of running around. So, where's my booth today? Booth 4. It's a trial session, so give them your best smile. I knocked on the booth door and stepped inside. A woman in a suit was seated inside. Nice to meet you, and sorry for the wait. I'm Skylar. Feel free to just call me Skylar. So, this is a trial lesson, right? You're interested in learning English? Yes, I'm thinking English might be useful for my second career. I see. Let's start with a casual conversation. Don't worry about it being in English, let's just have fun. Using simple English words and maintaining a slow pace, I conducted the lesson. I made sure to support her whenever she got stuck, keeping the conversation flowing. From her smiles, it seemed she enjoyed the session. After the lesson, she expressed her desire to officially sign up for classes. Your class really has a great reputation, Skylar. Your pronunciation is so native-like. I just want everyone to enjoy learning languages. Well, I'm heading out. See you. Closing the door, I stretched my arms lightly. Yes, this was my other workplace. An English conversation school, primarily catering to working professionals. This was the reason I was so particular about leaving work on time. I've never told anyone about this. No, it's something that must never be discovered. By now, the sky was dark, and the lights of bars and other establishments were starting to stand out. Finally done for the day. Time to head home. There was no need to hide in the shadows anymore on my way back. As I strolled leisurely, thinking about dinner, a voice suddenly called out to me. Oh, is that you, Skylar? Ha! Startled, I turned around with a dumbfounded expression. Standing there, looking puzzled, was someone I never expected to see. Skylar, do you live near this station? No. I just stopped by to clear my head. The woman was staring at me curiously. She was my boss, Hannah. She was a striking beauty with long black hair and stood out even in a bustling area like this. Despite being the CEO's daughter, she was known for her dedication to her work. She was the last person I could have imagined meeting here. I felt a jolt of surprise but quickly regained my composure. I had to find a way to navigate this situation. The reason? Our company strictly prohibits side jobs. If anyone found out, especially Hannah, the CEO's daughter, my dismissal would be inevitable. It was really just a coincidence. But I'm heading home now. You left on time, so you must have been at a nearby spot, right? Do you have any recommendations? Recommendations? Well, I had to come up with a believable excuse somehow. Just as I started considering throwing out the name of a random restaurant, Hannah began moving closer to me with determined steps. Despite myself, my heart skipped a beat. But then, I felt a tug at my neck and froze. Skylar. Skylar? It was a bad habit I had from time to time. Forgetting to take off my name tag before heading home. Today, because it had been warm, I'd taken off my jacket, leaving the tag completely visible. Hannah grabbed the tag, read the name of the school aloud, and then looked at me with piercing eyes. Care to explain this in detail? Yes. Before I knew it, I was sitting across from Hannah in a bar. She efficiently ordered a beer and some snacks, all while fixing her gaze on me like a hawk watching its prey. When the beer arrived, cheers! Ha! Cheers! Before I could even process what was happening, she downed her beer in one go. Aren't you drinking? If not, I'll just take yours until the food arrives. Wait. Once we're out of the office, let's drop formalities. Otherwise, we can't have a real conversation. The Hannah in front of me was completely different from the one I knew at work. I ordered another beer, watching as she drained the one she had snatched from me. The lively chatter around us filled the silence between us. When the additional beer arrived, she placed a mug in front of me and finally broke the ice. So, is teaching at the English Conversation School a side gig? This is already a demanding industry, and you know side jobs are prohibited. Why would you do this? You're aware of the rules, aren't you? There was no point in hiding it anymore. My termination was inevitable at this point. I took a sip of beer, stared at the mug, and began to speak. Money. It's not debt, is it? Well, it's close. Both of my parents have passed away, and I'm responsible for repaying my student loans and covering my sister's college expenses. She's staying with my aunt. My salary alone just isn't enough. The moment I said it, I regretted it. When I glanced up at Hannah, she was staring at me, a half-eaten chicken in her hand. You've got guts, saying that in front of the CEO's daughter. You're a bold one, Skylar. I'm sorry. I quickly apologized, thinking I'd angered her. But instead of getting mad, Hannah set down her chicken and slumped forward onto the table. Well, you're not wrong, so I won't deny it. As you know, this industry isn't exactly stable. And when the pay doesn't match the workload, the quality of work suffers. It's definitely something that needs improvement. To my surprise, Hannah didn't refute my words. However, she did say the one thing I'd been expecting. But as an employee, breaking company rules can't be overlooked. Yes, I understand. I'll accept whatever punishment you decide. As I braced myself for the inevitable, Hannah downed her beer in one gulp and leaned in close to me. Planting her hands on the table, she brought her face just inches from mine, tugged on my ear, and said, "If you agree to my terms, I'll let it slide." Ha! Her face, slightly flushed from the alcohol, carried a mischievous smile as she watched my reaction. What terms? It's simple. I'm pretty sure the pay isn't commensurate, so I won't ask for anything unreasonable. Releasing my ear, she sat back down and elaborated. Become my English teacher. Ignoring my confusion, Hannah continued. It's not that I can't speak English, but I've been thinking about improving my skills. Let's do it at my place on days you don't have lessons at the school. I can at least offer you tea and snacks. So, when do you think we can start? Skylar? Hannah swept her long, glossy hair over one shoulder and began flipping through her planner. For now, it seemed I had escaped disaster. Instead of being fired, I found myself agreeing to private, one-on-one lessons with the stunning woman in front of me. Was this really a price to pay, or something else entirely? For now, I decided to be grateful that my current life was intact. I chose to stop overthinking and set aside unnecessary thoughts for the time being. 3 days later, a new project was launched at the company. It was a plan fully geared toward inbound tourism. It seemed the company had finally decided to put more effort into addressing the increase in international travelers. Hannah was appointed as the project leader, which came as no surprise to anyone. What did catch people off guard, however, was that I, the so-called desk jockey, was included as a member. The first to protest was Eugene. Skylar is a mid-career hire, and frankly, his inclusion in this project raises some questions. It could impact team cohesion. Could we hear the reasoning behind this decision? Skylar has consistently handled client inquiries with precision, Hannah replied firmly. And more importantly, his English proficiency is exceptional. From gathering information to addressing inquiries, he'll undoubtedly be a valuable asset to this project. What? Everyone seemed momentarily taken aback by her statement. It was no wonder, since no one at the company had ever seen me use English before. Eugene's reaction was entirely understandable. To be honest, even I was surprised. But I quickly dispelled everyone's doubts. During the meeting, I translated and explained a set of materials written entirely in English. Skylar, that's amazing. Wow, you've been hiding this from us? Not fair. Guess we'll have to lean on you a lot from now on. The excitement in the room was palpable, but Hannah soon stepped in to bring everyone back down to earth. Hold it. Everyone has their own responsibilities, so don't overburden Skylar with too much. While my commitment to leaving on time hadn't changed, seeing the enthusiasm of my colleagues in Hannah stirred a new feeling within me. A desire to see this project succeed. My only concern, really, is whether I can get along with Eugene. No, that wasn't it. Today was the day. My private lessons with Hannah were starting today. I didn't know how things would turn out, which made it another source of unease in its own way. Before I knew it, the clock struck the end of the workday. Even though you've been randomly chosen for the project team, you're still leaving on time, huh? Just don't drag us down, Skylar. I understand. Have a good evening, Eugene. After our usual exchange, I headed toward the language school. Though the original plan was to conduct lessons on non-school days, Hannah had insisted on starting as soon as possible. So the first session was set to take place after my regular class. I wondered if it was really okay to meet that late, but considering she was keeping my side job a secret, I had no right to protest. Still, I couldn't help but think about it. Visiting the home of a single woman at night. After finishing my lessons, I headed to the address Hannah had provided. It was in a quiet residential area, 2 stations away from my usual stop. Seeing the neighborhood, I was reminded again that she really was the CEO's daughter. The apartment building itself was impressively large. She buzzed me in through the automatic lock, and I made my way to her door. I felt a little, very nervous. Reminding myself repeatedly that I was here to teach English and nothing more, I pressed the intercom. "Come on in." Wiping my slightly sweaty palms on my pants, I cautiously opened the door. "Excuse me. Thanks for coming." "I'll be right there, make yourself comfortable." "Ah, okay." Her voice came from somewhere, but I couldn't pinpoint where. Not wanting to linger awkwardly in the entryway, I hesitantly stepped inside. A pleasant aroma filled the air. Was she cooking dinner? Now that I thought about it, I hadn't eaten anything since lunch. Hannah's apartment was simple. Sophisticated might be the right word. The bookshelf was lined with books on English conversation and foreign novels. It seemed her desire to learn languages was genuine. Despite knowing it was impolite, I found myself glancing around. Amidst the refined decor, I noticed a well-loved stuffed rabbit that seemed to have been cherished for years. It added a touch of unexpected charm. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Skylar. Must have been a long day at the school." No, it's fine." Snapping back to reality, I looked at Hannah and froze again. Her slightly damp hair was tied back, with a towel draped around her neck. She was wearing a camisole with a wide neckline, its hem barely reaching mid-thigh, revealing her slender legs. Her face was stunning, too flawless to be called bare-faced. Without her usual sharp eyeliner and bold red lipstick, she looked unexpectedly soft and even more charming. "Skylar? Oh. I'm sorry. My bad. I thought I'd be done with my bath before you arrived. I'll get ready quickly." I nearly blurted out, "Please don't lean forward in that outfit." To hide the redness creeping onto my face, I pretended to rummage through my bag and gave a vague reply. Just then, the mouth-watering aroma intensified, and I looked up instinctively. In front of me was a table set with a perfectly cooked hamburger steak, salad, soup, and slices of baguette. "Let's eat." I started prepping the hamburger steak this morning. It's my specialty. But what about the lesson? Are you not hungry, Skylar? Let's eat first. Still dazed from everything that had happened, I couldn't deny my hunger. We started our late dinner. This is delicious. Right? I knew it. I'd love to open some wine to celebrate, but since we have a lesson, I'll hold off for tonight. Hannah playfully declared she'd hold off on alcohol, making a small triumphant pose as she joked about it. She was incredibly charming in that moment. For a brief second, I almost forgot the reason I was there. The project team, it must have surprised you. It was my decision alone. I felt like you could spark something in everyone, myself included. But I realize now I should have consulted with others first. I'm sorry. Please don't apologize. I was surprised, but I could also see how serious you were. It made me want to give it my all. Honestly, this is the first time I've felt that way since joining the company. Without realizing it, I was looking directly at her as I spoke. Her surprised expression caught my eye. You're so direct, Skylar. There's none of that roundabout way of speaking typical of Japanese people. What? I've never thought about it that way. Sorry. Hannah put down her fork and looked at me intently. It's fine. That's why your words feel honest. It makes me happy, in a way. Don't worry, I'll never tell anyone about your side job. Let's make this project a success together. Yes. Hannah cleared the dishes and then brewed some coffee for us. I offered to help, but she told me to focus on preparing for the lesson instead. With fresh coffee in hand, we began working through the checklist I had prepared. Hannah wasn't bad at English. Her skills were sufficient to handle her work without any issues. But as we progressed through the lesson, I realized something. She was striving for something greater. Though people described her as strict, it was clear she held herself to equally high standards. This was evident from the bookshelf packed with books on languages and certifications. More than anything, her dedication during the lesson went far beyond what one would expect from a condition she set in exchange for keeping my secret. Do you think this phrasing might be unclear? It's understandable, but let's use a standard business English expression here. It adds polish and credibility. Also, since you might be dealing directly with clients more often, let's expand your small talk repertoire. Got it. At some point, Hannah had started eating the chocolates that had mysteriously appeared on the table. She stared at the ceiling while repeating the phrases aloud. She looked just like a student cramming for an exam, and I couldn't help but laugh. Hey! Did you just laugh at me? I'm serious. Sorry. You just looked adorable. The words slipped out before I could stop myself, but Hannah's reaction was unexpected. Her face turned bright red, and as if suddenly self-conscious about her outfit. She averted her gaze and tried to pull her camisole down to cover her legs. But all that did was risk exposing her chest instead. An awkward tension filled the room. I wondered if my heart could even handle this. With the last train time approaching, the private lesson came to an end. Thank you for the meal tonight. I should be the one thanking you. Honestly, you could stay over, but if someone saw you leaving, that might be tricky. She says the most outrageous things so casually. As if staying over was even an option. I bade her good night and left her apartment. I'm looking forward to our next session, she said. Her parting words brought all the tension from the past few hours rushing back, leaving my body stiff. I ended up taking a wrong turn and nearly missed the last train home. A month passed. True to her word, Hannah hadn't told anyone about my side job. I didn't even need to confirm it. Seeing her at work, strict but earnest, had solidified my trust in her. Our private lessons continued. It was clear she made time for review and practice, and her dedication earned my utmost respect. The serious expressions Hannah sometimes wore, paired with her casual demeanor when we were together, so unguarded and almost careless, had started making it impossible for me to see her simply as a colleague. Despite my best efforts, I was beginning to see her as a woman. And so, there I was again, conducting a private lesson at her house. Since there were no school lessons today, we started earlier than usual. But when I arrived, Hannah was in the middle of preparing dinner. Skylar, welcome. Dinner will be ready in about 10 minutes. Just wait inside for now. Hannah. You don't have to go out of your way to make me dinner every time. Really, it's okay. But isn't it nicer to eat together? Wait, You don't think my cooking tastes bad, do you? That's absolutely not true. Hannah gave a satisfied smile and went back to the kitchen. I had suspected this for a while, but was this situation really okay? The fact that I seemed to be the only one conscious of it made it even more disheartening. To Hannah, this was probably all perfectly normal. After enjoying her incredible meat and potato stew, we started the lesson. As always, her ability to pick up new concepts was impressive. She had completely mastered what we covered last time. Thinking it was time for more practical experience, I shifted the focus to conversational exercises. Smiling at Hannah's adorably thoughtful expressions when she struggled with something, I couldn't help but start wondering what would happen once all of this was over. Oh, I didn't even notice. Skylar, it's a storm outside. What? Oh, you're right. The trains, yeah, they're down. I'll grab a taxi. Without realizing it, the weather had taken a drastic turn for the worse, turning into a full-blown storm. To be honest, even getting a taxi seemed unlikely, but it was my only option. Feeling bad, I asked to borrow an umbrella, planning to head home. And then it happened. Skylar, stay here tonight. My heart seemed to stop for a moment, then began pounding faster and faster. I'd drawn a line in my mind. No matter what happened and no matter how casual things seemed, staying overnight was something I couldn't do. As I hesitated, Hannah efficiently started preparing a bed. Wait a minute. No. If you get hurt trying to get home in this weather, I'd feel terrible. I can't have one of my team members getting injured. To her, this was just about looking out for a subordinate. It made sense, but at the same time, it was like being hit with the reality of how little I mattered as a man. My racing heart began to calm down. Thank you. I'll stay for the night. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the storm outside. It was the thought that, just behind the door, Hannah was sleeping in the next room. Even when I told myself to stop thinking about it, it was impossible. I need some water. Not wanting to disturb her, I made my way to the kitchen in the dark. As I sipped some water, I found myself lost in thought about how these days would eventually come to an end. In just 1 month, my entire world had shifted. Not just my work, but also Hannah. This was supposed to be just a way to keep her quiet about my side job, but the time I spent with her had grown increasingly important to me. I didn't know what would happen next. But with how quickly she was learning, this chapter would soon be over. It can't be helped. Overwhelmed by negative thoughts, I ended up saying it out loud. That's when I realized it. I hadn't noticed the shadow standing nearby. And then, that shadow suddenly wrapped its arms around me, holding me tightly. No. I don't want this to end. The identity of the shadow wasn't hard to guess. It was Hannah. What on earth was happening? Did I do something to upset her? But even so, that wouldn't explain why she was clinging to me. I stumbled in surprise and collapsed against the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor. Even then, Hannah continued clinging to me tightly. With me now sitting, she ended up practically sitting on my lap, making the situation even more intimate. Completely lost, I managed to force out some words. Hannah, don't say it can't be helped again. We finally found each other. She sobbed as she wrapped her arms around my back, clinging to me tightly, almost painfully. Her entire body pressed closer and closer against mine. While my tension kept rising, the fact that I didn't understand why she was crying gradually helped me regain some composure. It was dark, and I was in no state to think clearly. Surely, she must have mistaken me for someone else. Gently, I patted her head and averted my gaze as I spoke softly. Hannah? I'm Skylar. Are you okay? Skylar. Oh. Wait, I thought, wasn't I going to the bathroom? Oh no, I'm sorry. Still half asleep, Hannah slowly let go and returned to her room with unsteady steps. She must have someone she longs to hold that tightly. Though my mind was now fully awake, my body remained overheated, and I stayed seated in the kitchen, trying to cool down. The next morning. Good morning, Skylar. Did you sleep well? Ha! Was the bed uncomfortable? In the end, I must have fallen asleep in the kitchen last night and had hurriedly returned to the bed just moments ago. At the same time, Hannah had woken up. It seemed she really had been sleepwalking or dreaming, as she showed no signs of recalling the previous night's events. Deciding not to overthink it or dwell on it, I enjoyed a light breakfast with her, and we headed to work together. Unlike at night, being seen walking to work with her in the morning didn't seem like something that would raise any eyebrows. As we got off at the station near the office, Hannah suddenly exclaimed, "Oh no! I didn't check my emails last night. Skylar, I'm sorry, but I need to run ahead." "Thanks. Of course. Take care." She dashed off, leaving me behind. Just then, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Thinking I'd bumped into someone, I turned around only to find Eugene standing there. "Eugene, good morning." "Good morning, Skylar. Must have been fun walking to work with Hannah, huh?" "It was just a coincidence. Nothing unusual about it." "Really? You two share a station? I've never seen that before." "Hannah always rides alone." So Eugene had been on the same train. And apparently, he'd been observing Hannah regularly. I continued to feign ignorance. It really was just by chance. I was surprised myself. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to head to the office." "Fine. As if I'd want to walk to work with you." "Later." With a look of dissatisfaction, Eugene shot me a glance before walking off briskly. This had added an unnecessary complication. But I decided to focus on ensuring it wouldn't affect Hannah in any way and hurried to the office myself. Was I just overthinking things? Eugene's attitude toward me hadn't changed, but otherwise, the days passed uneventfully. Tonight, I was once again at Hannah's house for a private lesson. However, Hannah's improvement in English was becoming evident at work. Her bookshelf had also quietly filled with more study materials. "Skylar, shall we take a short break? I have a famous cake someone gave me. Breaks are important for learning too, I suppose." "Ha, I'll get it ready." While waiting for the tea Hannah was preparing, I casually glanced at her bookshelf and decided to ask her something that had been on my mind. "Hannah, why do you work so hard?" "At first, I thought you were just protecting me, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. But I feel like your effort goes beyond just work. You seem to have a clear, personal goal." "Well, it's a bit of a long and old story. Would you like to hear it?" "Yes, of course." After pouring herself a cup of tea and taking a sip, Hannah began to speak. "When I was little, I was a real brat. Ha! I was spoiled, acting like a princess. If I didn't get my way, I'd throw tantrums. I thought the world revolved around me. Then one day, we got new neighbors, a foreign family with a kid about my age. For no reason, I just didn't like him. I remember telling him, 'Don't get cocky just because you're a foreigner. That's something. Ridiculous, right?' Deep down, I think I admired him. His blue eyes and blonde hair were things I envied." Hannah gestured for me to eat the cake. It was indeed delicious, but I couldn't stop thinking about the rest of her story. Later, I found out he was ridiculously wealthy. He didn't go to school but had private tutors because his family traveled the world. After school, I'd often see him reading in their garden. Over time, I started visiting his house after school. I didn't have any friends, so it became something to look forward to. I envied him so much. One day, he said to me, "Hannah, you're wasting your potential." I got angry, of course. But he also showed me so many beautiful things about Japan I didn't even know. He told me he loved this country and said, one day, let's go somewhere together. Hannah wore an expression that was both joyful and bittersweet, like a young girl lost in a cherished memory. To her, it was clearly a vivid and significant recollection. She lifted her teacup to her lips but paused, setting it back down on the saucer without taking a sip. He eventually left for another country. But I thought, if I could share the beauty of this country he loved with the world, maybe we'd cross paths again someday. It sounds so grand when I say it aloud. It's a little embarrassing. Blushing slightly, she took a bite of cake as if to hide her feelings. Children or adults, human connections have no boundaries. Even brief encounters can change the course of someone's life. For Hannah, it was clear this memory was deeply significant, fueling her to keep pushing herself even when she had already accomplished so much. Skylar? Oh, thank you for sharing that with me. Forget it, it's embarrassing. But don't forget that I'm grateful for everything you've done. We laughed together, and the lesson ended for the night. That turned out to be the last lesson. A week later, the project was approaching its final stages. I'd left for work a little earlier than usual but found someone already in the office. Hannah sat perched on the edge of her chair, her head resting on her clenched fists against the desk. Good morning, Hannah. You're here early. Oh. Startled, she looked up, her face pale, her lips drained of color. Skylar. Good morning. After the morning meeting, could we talk for a moment? Sure. Her unusual demeanor made it clear this wasn't going to be good news. After a restless morning meeting, Hannah led me silently out of the office. Hannah silently led me to a place I rarely visited. It was the CEO's office. Hannah knocked, and I followed her in without question. Inside, I saw the familiar face of CEO, Mr. Taylor, the head of HR, Mr. Harvey, and for some reason, Eugene. So, you're Skylar, I presume? Yes. Hannah, you can leave now. The man speaking was Mr. Taylor, and he was Hannah's father. If he was asking her to leave, it was clear that I was the reason I had been summoned here. No, as his superior, I need to hear the details as well. Letting out a small sigh at Hannah's determined statement, Mr. Taylor glanced at Mr. Harvey, signaling him to continue. Skylar, you're familiar with this English conversation school, aren't you? Naturally, you are. Eugene here reported it to HR. And we conducted an investigation. I believe you understand what this means by now, don't you? I couldn't speak. The moment I had dreaded had finally come. Well, I must say, I was surprised myself, Eugene began, feigning regret. You worked so hard to join this company as a mid-career hire, only to break the rules by taking on a side job. It's unfortunate, but for the sake of the company, I couldn't ignore it. Don't take it personally. Skylar. Despite his polite words, Eugene's triumphant smirk made his true feelings abundantly clear. However, I couldn't argue back. There was no denying that I had violated company policy. Above all, I couldn't burden Hannah, who stood beside me biting her lip, with any more trouble. I'm sorry. Very well. You'll be dismissed at the end of this month. Hannah, I trust you'll handle the project's transition properly, Harvey instructed. Without answering, Hannah gave a slight bow before abruptly leaving the CEO's office. I followed her out. Hannah. I grabbed Hannah's arm, but she didn't turn around. Instead, she hunched over as if trying to suppress her trembling, then walked away without saying a word. Unable to chase after her or bring myself to return to the office, I wandered aimlessly through the hallway, my mind blank. What should I do now? What will happen to the project? I might never see Hannah again. As my thoughts spiraled, so tangled I couldn't even tell what I was worrying about anymore, I suddenly heard voices coming from around a corner. Hannah, calm down. It's a good thing your subordinate's misconduct came to light early. Imagine if it had blown up while the project was in full swing, it would have been a disaster. This was risk management at its best. It's better this way. It was Eugene talking to Hannah. I knew they were discussing me, but I couldn't stop myself from eavesdropping. I wanted to hear what Hannah had to say. Eugene, why would you? Why? Because Skylar is the one at fault. Look, Hannah, I know you've been close to him recently, adding him to the project, commuting with him. All that. But a violation is a violation. Ignoring it would only put you in a difficult position. That's why I investigated him for your sake. Can't you see that? You went out of your way to investigate Skylar? Well, I always suspected his obsession with leaving on time was hiding something. I did this to protect you before it caused any trouble. Why can't you understand that? Please. Just leave me alone right now. After a brief silence, I heard heavy footsteps stomping away. Hannah was just on the other side of the pillar where I was hiding. I hesitated. Could I say anything to her, knowing I was the root of all this? No, it was my fault. She shouldn't have to feel this way because of me. But as I turned to leave, I couldn't help but walk toward her. Hannah stood with her face buried in her hands, on the verge of collapsing to the floor. Hannah. Skylar? Why are you here? She lowered her hands, revealing teary eyes and a trembling mouth, her emotions clearly overwhelming her. Seeing her like this, my thoughts began to clear. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Skylar. I couldn't protect you. It's okay. The rules are absolute, after all. More than that, thanks to you, I had such an amazing time. I consider myself lucky. Hannah grabbed my sleeve, looking up at me with tearful eyes. Skylar, don't quit. Don't leave. Please, I'm begging you. She must have known it was impossible. Whether it was about the project or something more, just the fact that she tried to stop me, even while crying, made me feel deeply grateful. The importance of this project is something even Mr. Taylor fully understands. Honestly, I'm grateful they allowed me to stay until the end of the month instead of immediate dismissal. Please, let me work alongside you until the very last moment. We stood there in silence until Hannah stopped crying. Even as we returned to the office, she continued holding onto my sleeve. This was the result of the path I had chosen. All I could do now was support Hannah until the very end, and then say goodbye. While she was crying, I had time to sort through my own emotions and accept what was coming. From that day forward, I prepared for the transition of my tasks while dedicating myself even more to the project. I also took a leave from my English teaching job to focus solely on work. Today will likely end with the arrival of my official dismissal notice. It's also the most critical and challenging day for the project. The press release is being held. A major travel company is launching a completely revamped and ambitious tour project. The event is massive, with key stakeholders and international media in attendance. It was no exaggeration to say the company's future was riding on this. As preparations for the venue progressed, Hannah and I were in the office, going over the final draft of the script. The other team members had already gone ahead to the main conference room for a final check. I can't believe today is finally here. Yes, but everything we've done so far will pay off. Are you nervous? I am, but it's not just that. Trailing off, Hannah set the papers down on her desk and stepped out into the hallway, gesturing for me to follow. She opened a window wide, letting in a refreshing breeze. I stood beside her. As we gazed at the sky together, feeling the breeze, Hannah suddenly took my hand in hers. Startled, I looked at her, and she smiled gently, her brows slightly lowered as if in quiet determination. Skylar, watch over me, okay? Bathed in sunlight and caressed by the wind, Hannah looked breathtakingly beautiful. I placed my other hand over hers and smiled back. Of course. At my words, her smile grew even brighter as she turned and walked back into the office. It was time for me to head to my station. Though I'd be in a separate room overseeing the monitors, I was grateful I'd still be able to watch over her. Just as I was about to leave, I heard hurried footsteps coming from the office. "What's going on?" I rushed back to the office, only to be met with an unusual and chaotic sight. "No way. It's gone. I'm sure I left it here. The computer data, it's gone. Skylar, the script is missing." I joined her, but it was nowhere to be found. We had spent so much time talking earlier that there was no time left to prepare for this. If she didn't arrive at the venue on time, things would only get worse. I calmed Hannah down and sent her ahead to the conference room. I clearly remembered seeing her place the file on the desk. While I racked my brain for a solution, the start time crept closer and closer. Grabbing a placeholder file, I sprinted to the conference room and threw open the doors. The press release had already begun, and the MC had just called her name. Seeing Hannah frozen, pale as a sheet, unable to move, I gently tapped her shoulder and stepped onto the stage. I wasn't entirely free of nerves myself. But this was my chance to repay her for everything. Recalling the contents of the presentation, I began to speak. My smooth delivery seemed to leave my colleagues stunned, but the real challenge lay ahead, the Q&A session. There were representatives from several countries in the audience. Japanese? No problem there. The next question was in English. Of course, no problem. German? While I could have answered in English, responding in German would add prestige to the project. I replied in fluent German. As anticipated, questions followed in Korean and Chinese, which I addressed seamlessly. The final question came in Russian. In Russia, Japanese culture has been gaining popularity in recent years. Though it had been a while since I last used Russian, I managed to respond without issue. "Are there any further questions?" When I asked this in Japanese, the audience erupted into applause. I bowed deeply and stepped off the stage. What just happened? Eugene, the only person from the office in the venue, stood dumbfounded as he blurted out the words. But my only concern was Hannah. I glanced at her. She was wide-eyed, her hands clasped over her mouth in astonishment. After addressing individual questions and seeing off the attendees, the press release came to a close. The moment I returned to the office, I was immediately surrounded by colleagues. "Skylar, you speak more than just English? That was incredible. But why were you the one presenting?" I knew it might not be entirely fair to address this in front of everyone. Still, this had only turned out well by chance. One misstep could have dragged the entire company into a disaster, with Hannah shouldering all the blame. I walked over to Eugene, who was sitting at his desk, arms crossed, bouncing his leg impatiently. "Eugene, why did you do it? I don't know what you're talking about." Hearing my question, Hannah rushed over. "What's going on?" After Hannah left for the venue, I checked the area around your desk. "I'm sorry for doing so." I pulled out a plastic bag containing the shredded documents. The ripped pieces were haphazardly torn, but the project name and Hannah's name were still visible. When we were in the hallway, you stayed behind in the office. You hid, stole the documents, and destroyed them. The tearing is so careless because you couldn't make much noise. Hannah accidentally left her computer unlocked. And you deleted the files to sabotage her. Eugene clenched his teeth audibly and shot to his feet, knocking his chair over. You have no proof I did this. For all we know, it could have been you. That's impossible. Skylar was with me in the hallway. And I don't believe anyone else would have done it. All eyes in the office turned to Eugene, filled with suspicion. He shouted, nearly lunging toward Hannah. This is your fault, Hannah. You're the one to blame. Everything I did for you. You never give me special treatment. You deserve this much punishment. He froze mid-rant, realizing what he had just admitted. The room fell silent. Eugene trembled, kicked the fallen chair across the floor, and stormed out of the office. The silence was heavy. I'll report this matter to the higher-ups. Everyone, thank you for your hard work today. Please leave on time. It was already 5 p.m. One by one, everyone left the office, leaving just Hannah and me behind. Telling everyone to leave on time, yet here I am still working. I forgot to thank you earlier. Thank you for helping me. Skylar, I didn't know you were skilled in languages other than English as well. My parents' work had us moving around the world when I was a kid. I'm glad it was useful. Useful doesn't even begin to describe it. Skylar, you saved the company and me. And yet, I knew what she wanted to say. The delay in her return after the press release likely meant she had gone to plead my case directly with Mr. Taylor. But the outcome was written on her face. I was able to help you in the end. That's enough for me. Wanting to see her smile instead of looking downcast, I mustered my best smile and gently patted her shoulder. Skylar, shall we celebrate? As a thank you, too. Sounds good. We decided to head to the same bar that now felt nostalgic from that fateful day. It was a no-overtime day, which I had completely forgotten about. The area near the station was packed with people, and we unintentionally walked shoulder to shoulder. I let my thoughts drift, thinking how this might be the last time for such moments, and wasn't paying attention. Before I knew it, I bumped hard into someone coming from the opposite direction. To make matters worse, the person I collided with spilled a can of coffee all over my face. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? No worries, man. My bad too. I was relieved that the person I bumped into turned out to be kind. However, the coffee that got into my eye stung, so I quickly wiped my face. At that moment, my other arm was suddenly pulled forcefully, nearly making me stumble. Whoa! Hannah? What's wrong? What does this mean? Huh? Confused, I noticed something off about my vision and glanced at the handkerchief I had just used. There, stuck to it, was a colored contact lens I had accidentally wiped off. You were wearing colored contact lenses, Skylar? I had planned to leave quietly, but Hannah gripped my hand tightly, staring at me as if demanding an explanation. There was no escaping her now. With a deep breath, I removed the other contact lens and held it out for her to see. I'm half Japanese. My hair's dyed black. At my previous job, my appearance led to overwhelming expectations regarding English, which only increased my workload. I couldn't take it anymore. When I joined this company, I decided to change my appearance. Ha ha. Looks like I got caught in the end. I knew how tough the travel industry could be, the pay included. People told me to choose another path. But I couldn't give up on my dream. Hannah let go of my arm, but instead of stepping back, she moved closer, gripping the lapel of my jacket. Your dream, what is it? I want to share this country, my beloved Japan, with the world. Hannah, on the verge of tears, placed her hand gently on my cheek. The day I told you I was leaving Japan, I made you cry like this too, didn't I? I'm sorry, Hannah. Ignoring the bustling crowd around us, Hannah wrapped her arms around my neck. I could feel her tears on my skin and hear her muffled sobs right by my ear. Why didn't you tell me? I waited, and I couldn't wait anymore. Ouch. Ha, you were mad back then too, when I said it couldn't be helped because it was my parents' work. Of course I was mad. That's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted you to say we'd meet again someday. You're right. I gently pulled her away, fixing her hair slightly as I spoke. My life has changed so much since then. My parents passed away, their company was sold, and I was left with nothing. I've been passed around between relatives, and even now, I can barely support my sister. So even when I realized you still remembered me, I couldn't say anything. The version of me you hold in your memories doesn't exist anymore. With a quiet exhale, I told myself this truly had to be the end. I looked Hannah in the eyes. This is goodbye, Hannah. The boy you knew, who shared your dreams, is gone. Just knowing I'm part of your memories is enough for me. No sooner had I spoken than Hannah's voice rang out, loud enough to turn heads around us. You idiot! It was the first time I had ever heard Hannah, who always carried an air of elegance, raise her voice so loudly. Even she seemed surprised by it, breathing heavily as if it was something she had never done before. You're an idiot. I'd been through things too. Constant bullying for being rich, nonsensical complaints about trips I planned. Rumors about me being a nepotism hire. But still, it was your dream, the one you gave me. I wanted to chase it, and I told you. I thought maybe we'd meet again someday. Pouring her heart out with words that had been bottled up for years, Hannah finally steadied her breathing. She hugged herself tightly before looking up at me and speaking softly. My first love. What am I supposed to do about it? I'm about to be unemployed. That's not an answer. As tears welled up again, she turned her face away. I gently held her chin and turned her face back to me. I had regretted so deeply making her cry when I left all those years ago, saying it couldn't be helped. This time, I was determined not to let her make that face again. Pulling her into a strong embrace, I finally said, my first love has finally come true. Hannah, I love you. With those words, we buried our faces into each other's shoulders, closing the gap of over 10 years in an instant. When we came back to our senses, we realized the surrounding drunks had burst into cheers of celebration for us. The next day, Hannah and I were in the CEO's office. As Mr. Taylor entered, we both bowed deeply in unison. Mr. Taylor. I fully understand the seriousness of the rule violation. However, as I mentioned, without Skylar's efforts, the press release would have failed. Please reconsider your decision. That's a separate matter. Then, I will resign as well for failing to notice his side job. Hannah had explicitly told me beforehand not to interfere, but there was no way I could let her resign because of me. Just as I was about to speak up, Mr. Taylor began to talk. I cannot make an exception just for him. This isn't about his abilities. If I were to overlook this, what about Eugene, who was also dismissed? Should I excuse his actions because things worked out in the end? Skylar's dismissal is final, effective tomorrow. Ugh. Hannah was left speechless, unable to counter his argument. I gently patted her back, signaling that it was enough. Well, Skylar, you can start preparing for your next job search the day after tomorrow. That being said, the reaction to the press release has been exceptional. We're officially launching a new department, and the manager in charge is looking for capable and trustworthy talent. It might be worth hearing them out. Mr. Taylor. Thank you so much. Until tomorrow, you are still an employee. Now, go on. I bowed deeply once more and left the room with Hannah. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. One must uphold the rules. But the fact remains that Skylar's reputation in the industry is growing. He's someone we'd like to keep. It seems this is a turning point for the company as well. I'll do my best, too. Hannah said with a bright smile. Seeing her genuine joy, Mr. Taylor couldn't help but smirk. As her father, I'm also rooting for my daughter's first love. Wait, what? Dad? You knew? I later learned that Mr. Taylor had noticed me all along. A few months have passed since then. Now, I spend my days busy in the newly established department. It was a small, elite team, and the office often buzzed with languages other than Japanese. The workload was demanding, but my salary had increased significantly, surpassing what I had earned while juggling a side job. Things were going well with Hannah, too. We were practically living together, though our private lessons continued. Having grown closer, I had seen more of Hannah's unguarded side. which sometimes made it hard to keep a straight face when watching her serious expressions during planning meetings. Tonight was one such occasion, and she had scolded me for it. Seriously, Skylar. When you smile at me like that, it makes me even more nervous. Be more careful. Sorry. I stroked Hannah's head to cheer her up as she pouted. Hannah leaned into my chest, looking up at me with wide, curious eyes. Perhaps she still wasn't used to my natural hair and eye color since I had stopped dyeing and wearing colored contact lenses. I've been thinking. When we were kids, you used to call me Hannah, right? But what did I call you? I can't remember. Well, back then, your English was pretty bad. Huh? What do you mean? You'll turn bright red if I tell you. You used to shout it so loudly back then. Still leaning on me, Hannah wrapped her arms around my neck, insisting, "Tell me." Smiling, I stroked her head, leaned in close, and whispered in her ear. "Darling. Will you call me that again?" Hannah turned bright red, glanced at me briefly, then buried her face again. I continued stroking her head, thinking tonight's lesson might be postponed again. A single word and a single encounter can change a person's life. It holds the power to steer someone in a good or bad direction. This power, along with the responsibilities and possibilities it carries, has the potential to open doors or close them. It's that significant a force. We spend our lives learning its magnitude, sometimes regretting, sometimes being profoundly grateful, as we navigate our journey. I think I'll give poor Scott, a high school graduate, a chance. I'm about to throw a super tough question his way. If he solves it, I'll give him $100,000. What? What is she even saying? Back in high school, she was the girl I admired, the one who was kind to a lonely guy like me who didn't have any friends. I went to the reunion just to thank her for that kindness. But she was nothing like she used to be, and she hit me with this outrageous offer. As I stared at her in shock, she leaned in close, grinning, and whispered in my ear. Bet you've never seen $100,000 in your life, huh? A rich girl like me is offering to give you some charity. Aren't I the sweetest? I felt a surge of frustration. The girl I'd looked up to all this time turned out to be like this. I could just let it go, but even I have my limits. It got under my skin. If that's how you want it, then fine. I'll take you up on that. Fine. So if I solve it, you'll give me $100,000, right? Oh, so you're actually up for it? Just what I'd expect from a poor guy. Gotta say, I like that scrappy spirit. Alright, just watch me. I'll solve this problem in no time. Let me show you a comeback like you've never seen. My name is Scott Sullivan. I work for a major IT company. These days, I make enough to live comfortably, but I grew up in a single-parent household after my father died in an accident. And we struggled financially. To top it off, maybe because of my personality, I had a hard time fitting in and spent a lonely school life. I'm not good at reading social cues or handling emotions. I get yes and no, but I just don't get those typical ambiguous expressions people use in Japan. And even if I see someone struggling or looking down, I get lost on how to comfort them, so I just stay quiet, which makes me come off as cold. Because of that, people always kept a certain distance from me. The girls, especially, would laugh and give me nicknames like Iron Mask or Living Doll, which only made me more self-conscious around them. One of the hardest parts for me was forming groups during PE or school events. Every time Ms. Andrews would say, "Alright, everyone, get into groups of 4 with whoever you want," it was like a cue to be singled out. Groups would form one after another, and no one ever invited me to join them. Ah, Scott, left out again? Anyone willing to let Scott join? Ms. Andrews would call out. But most people just pretended not to hear. If it was a group of 5, sometimes Ms. Andrews's voice would reluctantly get me in, but even then, the other 4 would chat, leaving me out entirely. Those lonely school years continued until I got to high school, where I met a real savior. Her name was Sarah. During a school trip, she saw me left out again and actually asked me to join her group. What? Sarah, is this your charity work again? Her friend Emily said to her. Come on, it's sad, right? It's a school trip, shouldn't it be fun? Alright, if you insist, Sarah, then fine. Sarah's usual group was a trio, so adding me in made a perfect four, but from then on, she always included me whenever she could. Thanks to her, I slowly started to be able to talk to others. Sarah, as it turned out, was the daughter of a company president. Not only was she beautiful, but her refined manners made her the center of admiration in our class. The mere fact that someone like her would reach out to me was enough to make me feel elated. During high school, I quietly harbored feelings for her, but in the end, I couldn't bring myself to confess. And we graduated without anything happening. While most of my classmates went on to college, I took a job at a small company to help support my mother. I remember the big stir in our class when everyone found out that Sarah had gotten into Tokyo University. I sighed, knowing she was truly out of reach, a rare gem. Since then, I've had my share of ups and downs and now work at a different company. My income is worlds apart from what it was back then, enough that I can finally make things easier for my mother, who used to juggle multiple part-time jobs. Still, I haven't really changed when it comes to dealing with women. Even today, a woman I work with scolded me to get a move on. I've been telling you all morning that there's a meeting this afternoon, haven't I? If you're this behind on your tasks, you won't even have time to grab lunch. Sorry. I'll just have a sandwich in the car or something. Oh, that's terrible for your health. You can't keep doing that. Alright, I'll try to be better from now on. Seriously. If I didn't push you, nothing would ever get done. The one nagging me from behind was Michelle. She's a beautiful employee who graduated from a well-known private university. At my current job, the schedule is packed down to the minute. I'm the type who forgets the time when I'm focused, so without her support, I can't seem to manage my tasks well. One day, in the midst of my hectic routine, I received a postcard. It was an invitation to my high school reunion. To be honest, I didn't have any friends to go with, nor did I really have the time. But a part of me wanted to see Sarah again and thank her for what she did back then. Before I realized it, I'd already checked attending and mailed back the reply. By the way, what's this evening appointment? I thought we had a meeting with another company that day. Oh, that? It's my high school reunion. I thought I'd finally give it a shot and go. The venue's close enough that I can make it right after our meeting. Wait, didn't you say before that you didn't have any close friends from high school? Yeah, that's true. But there was someone who helped me out back then. I thought maybe now I could finally thank her. Oh, is that so? Michelle seemed a bit displeased, though I couldn't quite figure out why. Maybe she was annoyed that I was taking time off for a reunion while everyone else was swamped with work. Hey, why don't you leave early that day and relax a bit too? Go have a drink with friends or something. Her expression immediately soured even more. No, thanks. I'll be here handling all the piled-up paperwork. As diligent as ever, I see. That's all I've got going for me. Besides, don't forget we have an early flight the next morning. Oh, right. Phew. Absolutely no after parties, alright? We're heading out at 3 a.m. Yeah, I got it. With a 3 a.m. departure, staying out drinking all night isn't an option. I finally started to understand why she seemed so irritated. A few days later, I headed to the reunion venue. It was held in a ballroom at a downtown hotel, filled with quite a crowd in a dazzling setting. There was karaoke, bingo, and some sort of game set up on a whiteboard with geometric magnetic tiles attached. In the center of the room was a particularly glamorous group, and right at the heart of it was the woman I'd come to see. Wait, who's that? As I walked in a bit late, someone whispered, glancing at me, but nobody seemed to recognize who I was. Back in high school, I wore second-hand uniforms, but today, I was dressed sharply in a suit. My build was different too, having gained some well-toned muscle over the years. So it wouldn't be easy for them to connect the dots to the guy I was back then. I walked over to the lively group surrounding Sarah and called her name. "It's been a long time, Sarah, right?" "Yes, I am Sarah, but who are you?" She tilted her head slightly, looking at me with a hint of blush, unable to recognize me at first glance. "It's Scott, from our class. Thanks for always talking to me back then." "What? You're Scott?" As I thanked her, the woman beside Sarah gave me a suspicious look. That was probably Emily, the same friend who'd always been by Sarah's side in high school. Unlike Sarah, she'd been bluntly unpleasant to me, and, to be honest, I didn't like her at all. Well. Seems that gloomy aura from back then is gone. But in the end, you're still just Scott, aren't you? How brave of you to come to a reunion when you don't even have any friends. Hey, Emily, that's a bit harsh. Sarah stepped in to soften Emily's jab. But something felt off. She wasn't the same Sarah I remembered. And her next words confirmed my suspicion. "You know, it'd be a bit of a problem if you got the wrong idea. The only reason I bothered to talk to you in high school was because you looked so pitiful being all alone. And I thought being nice might help with my college recommendation. I figured it couldn't hurt to stay in the teacher's good graces. Thanks to that, I got into Tokyo University and became Miss Campus, and now I'm next in line at my dad's company. I don't have to worry about appearances anymore. Being liked by a poor, unremarkable guy? No thanks. You get what I'm saying? Sarah, you're being way too honest." The second they realized I was Scott, the people around us started looking at me with a sneer. "Look, I'm not here because I want anything from you, Sarah. I just wanted to thank you." "Oh, is that right? I guess you finally understand your place now that you're all grown up." "Oh wow, Sarah, you're really letting it all out." Their snickering echoed around us. "But hey, isn't that watch Scott's wearing super expensive?" One of her friends made a show of noticing my watch. "Look at Scott, a high school graduate with a fancy watch? Must be a fake." It's hilarious how flashy poor people try to look. I was ready to just ignore them and move on. Then Sarah suddenly grabbed my arm. "Hey, what are you?" "Just a little bored, that's all." "Come on, humor me for a bit." Sarah picked up the microphone in the hall and made an announcement that was beyond humiliating. "Everyone, we have Scott here, a high school grad. Remember him? He was pretty invisible back then, but do you remember?" The crowd's attention instantly turned toward us. "Scott here is wearing a fake luxury watch just to impress everyone at the reunion." The laughter began almost immediately. No way. How embarrassing. This was a nightmare. I wanted to disappear. And for our poor Scott, I think I'll give him a chance. I'm about to give him a super difficult problem. If he can solve it, I'll give him $100,000. Wait, what? What is she talking about? As I stared at her in stunned silence, she leaned in with a smug grin and whispered in my ear. "You've probably never seen that much money in your life, have you? A rich girl like me is offering to help you out. Aren't I just the sweetest?" I was furious. The girl I had admired all this time turned out to be like this. I could just let it go, but even I have my limits. It got under my skin. If that's how you want it, then fine. I'll take you up on that. All right. So if I solve it, you'll give me $100,000, right? Oh, you're actually up for it? That's what I like about poor folks, their scrappy spirit. The crowd was buzzing with excitement. Oh, go for it, Scott. Just the other day, a friend mentioned an incredibly hard problem. They said anyone who solved it would be a genius. Even someone from Tokyo University couldn't solve it right away. Think you can handle it? She began writing the problem on the whiteboard. It was a question from the 1990 International Mathematical Olympiad held in China. That's what they call the Master Demon problem. This is way too hard. Looks like you're in big trouble, Scott. Amid the mocking laughter, I respond with a straight face. This is all you've got? The answer is. In front of everyone watching, I breezed through the problem without even breaking a sweat, solving it in less than a minute. No way. I can't believe it. At first, people around me are stunned, not comprehending what just happened, but then they burst into applause and cheers. Unbelievable, Scott. This guy just won $100,000. As the crowd's mocking turns into cheers, Sarah shoots an angry glare at me. Just because you managed to solve one problem, don't start acting all high and mighty. A lowly high school graduate like you will always be just that, a poor nobody. I didn't mean to upset her, but it's already out of control. As I'm pondering what to do, out of nowhere, I hear Michelle's voice behind me. President Sullivan, it's about time. If we don't get you to the hotel soon, it might affect tomorrow's work. Oh, Michelle. Seeing her here, someone who wasn't supposed to be in this crowd, gives me an odd sense of relief. The people around us, hearing her address me, are now buzzing with confusion. Wait. President? Who is that beautiful woman? Also, as it seems someone here has been quite disrespectful to our company's president, I'd like to clarify. Mr. Sullivan graduated from Cambridge. And our company ranks among the top in the nation. He's neither a high school grad nor poor, for the record. Now, shall we, Mr. Sullivan? Yeah, let's go. As Michelle and I start to exit the room, gasps and murmurs ripple through the crowd. Wait. I know her. She's the famous assistant from SKT System Solutions. So, does that mean Scott is the president of that company? Come to think of it, I think I've seen him in a business magazine before. The truth is, I am the president of one of the top IT companies in the country, SKT System Solutions. I wasn't exactly a bad student back in school. I just didn't like drawing attention, so I kept my grades average on purpose. Since childhood, I've had a photographic memory, the ability to retain images exactly as I saw them. This unique memory skill, often called eidetic memory. Thanks to that, there was a time when I was celebrated as a genius. People had high hopes, thinking I would one day be a pillar of the nation, and I was even appointed class representative in elementary school. However, a class rep needs to lead, listening to others and uniting the class. Not understanding others' thoughts well, I often said the wrong things, quickly becoming isolated. The adults who had pinned their hopes on me grew disappointed, labeling me as lacking in cooperation. I'll never forget the cold, disheartened look my teacher gave me then. From that point on, I kept my academic abilities hidden and avoided standing out. Throughout my school years, I was seen as a failure, lacking intelligence, social skills, and money. But my uncle, seeing my potential, encouraged me to attend a university overseas. He found scholarships and mutual aid programs to help me attend Cambridge University. So it's no surprise that my old classmates, who only knew me from high school, scoffed at my name. They never would have guessed that I would become a high-achieving, high-earning president. I hadn't planned to reveal this side of me, but at this point, there's no helping it. Michelle, how long will it take to get from here to the hotel? I've reserved a hotel close to the airport, so we can get room service for dinner. Your flight is at 5:20 a.m. As we prepare to leave, the women who were keeping their distance suddenly light up and start chatting me up. Wait, are you really a president, Scott? If you just told us that sooner. Exactly. We're classmates, don't be so reserved. As I stand there, baffled by their sudden change in attitude, Sarah approaches with a different, friendly smile. So, Scott, you're the president of SKT System Solutions now? No wonder you solved that problem so easily. Say, how about we grab a bite together after this? It'd be nice to reminisce about old times. Just as I'm left speechless by her about face, Michelle's voice sounds again from behind me. Excuse me, but there's no way Mr. Sullivan, a renowned young mind of Japan, would waste his time with someone who mocked him. You mentioned giving $100,000 if he solved the problem, but our company's annual revenue is in the tens of billions of dollars. Trying to lure Mr. Sullivan with such a small amount is pointless. The tens of billions of dollars. As Sarah and her friends stand speechless, Michelle takes my hand and confidently leads me through the hall. And just like that, I turned the reunion I'd looked forward to into a grand showcase of karma before leaving the venue. In the car on the way back, Michelle bows her head apologetically. Mr. Sullivan, I apologize for speaking out of turn and being so rude to your friends. Don't worry about it. But you were keeping your current position a secret, weren't you? Yeah, but it's all right. You were just trying to help me, right? I actually appreciated it. You did? Then, I'm glad. Hearing that, her cheeks turn red all the way to her ears. And seeing her like that, I find her even more endearing. A few months later, while out in the suburbs on personal business, I catch sight of a woman who looks remarkably like Sarah. Her posture looks weary, a stark contrast to the confident presence she once had. Is that Sarah? I call out, and she turns around, startled. It's undeniably Sarah. Scott, are you okay? You look exhausted. When I speak my mind, she gives a bitter laugh. You probably already know, right? Our company got delisted recently. I'm sure you're here to laugh at the one who insulted you. Really? I'm sorry, I'm clueless about stocks. What? So you didn't come over just to mock me? Me? Why would I? I answer honestly, and she chuckles softly, looking amused. Come to think of it, you were always like that. You've never been one to sneer at others or say anything two-faced. Sorry, I guess subtlety isn't my strength. There's no need to apologize. That's actually something to be proud of. Maybe. But it's true that back in school, you were my motivation. I genuinely liked you, so when I heard you preferred intelligent guys, I studied my heart out. That's how I ended up going to Cambridge. In a way, I owe who I am now to you. You do? So, regardless of what happens to your company, your worth doesn't change. I understand things are tough right now. But I don't think giving up is the answer. Don't you agree? You're right, but I've already been working so hard. And while you might be concerned about being listed, our company is highly profitable as a private unicorn. Sure, listing brings credibility. But it also comes with restrictions. No listing costs, fewer risks of acquisition. It's a matter of management style. You're smart, Sarah. Why not build the company you really want? You're right. Born as a president's daughter, I've always lived trying to meet others' expectations. But maybe it's time I try my own approach. Thank you. I'm going to give it a shot. Not long after, I hear she launched a new jewelry brand. Previously, they focused on high-end pieces, but now she's also offering affordable items for everyday use. Her brand has garnered significant attention for its successful new market strategy. So, I decide to place an order with her brand for my company's commemorative gifts. Honestly, it's my way of giving back to her for her hard work. She soon visits our office. Mr. Sullivan, thank you so much for choosing our company. No problem. I'd heard you were doing well after all your hard work, so consider this both a congratulations and an order. Still, it means so much to me. If you're free, would you join me for dinner after our meeting? As she quickly invites me, Michelle just as quickly interjects. Unfortunately, Mr. Sullivan has a dinner meeting scheduled with a client tonight. Oh, well, what about tomorrow or the day after? No, I'm afraid his schedule is fully booked for the next 3 months. Then after that? No, his schedule will remain fully booked indefinitely. Watching their back and forth, I can barely hold back my laughter. I can't help but chuckle, and Sarah looks visibly relieved. I'm glad to see you smiling like this, Scott. What are you talking about? Mr. Sullivan is always smiling. Yes, well, that must be because you're by his side. That puts my mind at ease. Beautiful assistant, take good care of him, okay? Support him well. Of course. Even without you saying so, I'll be here to support him for life. Well, that's good to hear. I'll take my leave now. Mr. Sullivan, I look forward to working with you in the future. Sarah seemed different somehow, as though she'd shed her old self. Curious, I couldn't help but ask her. Sarah, you seem different. Did something shift for you? Oh, you noticed? Actually, when my father's company was in trouble, all those people who'd been hanging around me just vanished. I thought they were my close friends, so it was a shock. But, deep down, I realized that's just how things are. All the effort I put into being liked. It was only worth so much, and just like that, it was gone. So I decided to stop caring about what others think and just live true to myself. I see. I think that's great. The way you are now, Sarah, you seem more alive than ever. Thank you. Scott, you said I saved you back in high school, but this time, it's the other way around. You saved me. Truly, thank you. No, it was all you. You're the one who worked hard to overcome it. Heh, you haven't changed, Scott. With a smile, Sarah left the office. Since then, we've remained good friends, talking regularly. Back in school, I was at my lowest point. But because of that time, I can now fully appreciate where I am. For anyone feeling like they're at rock bottom, I hope you can take a step back and see the big picture. One day, you'll be able to look back and laugh, thinking, yeah, I went through that too.